I climbed into the wrong black SUV at 11:47 p.m. on Christmas Eve, and the locks clicked before I could blink. The driver didn't ask where I was going. He turned his head just enough for me to see the hard line of his jaw in the rearview mirror, and he said, calm as a closing door, "You're not leaving, Fawn. If you want the full spiral, subscribe now, because this is the part where the city stops feeling real." My phone died in my hand on a Brooklyn sidewalk, the screen going black like it had decided to abandon me too. I'd been outside a coworker's Christmas party for exactly 3 minutes, long enough for the cold to sting my eyes and for the strap on my heel to snap again. I'd bought the shoes because they were cheap and looked expensive from far away. Up close, they were already betraying me. A black SUV rolled up to the curb, windows tinted, heat fogging the glass. I didn't check the plate. I didn't even hesitate. My fingers were numb, my coat was thin, and my pride was tired. I yanked the back door open and folded myself inside. Leather, warmth, relief. "Oh, thank God," I breathed, rubbing my hands together. "4th Street, please. My phone died, but the ride should be paid. And can you—" A voice cut through me like wire. "Who are you?" I froze. Slowly, I leaned forward, peering between the front seats. He'd turned fully to look at me. Ice-light eyes, dark hair, a face built out of sharp angles and refusal. The kind of man who didn't need to raise his voice because the world already moved for him. My throat stuck. "I'm the Uber. I'm the passenger." I called. His gaze didn't shift. It pinned. Then his eyes flicked to the side mirror and his whole expression changed. Not to fear, not to surprise, just to decision. The SUV jerked forward so hard my head smacked the headrest. "Hey!" I grabbed the seat. "What are you doing? Stop. I'll report you." A second car slid up alongside us, black and low, matching our speed with predatory ease. The window rolled down. Metal caught streetlight. A gun. Sound left my body in a cracked little gasp that didn't feel human. A hand shot back and grabbed a fistful of my hair. Not yanking, not cruel, efficient like he'd done it 100 times. "Down." One word. No argument allowed. He shoved my head toward the floor. I hit the carpet, the smell of leather and cologne and winter salt filling my lungs. The first shot blew out the back window. Glass rained. My scream got swallowed by carpet and panic. More shots, sharp cracks that turned the inside of the car into a storm of noise. Up front, the man spoke rapid Italian into something. Phone, radio, God, I couldn't tell. His voice steady like this was traffic, not an ambush. "Let me out," I shouted, voice breaking. "Stop the car." "No," he said flat. The chase lasted minutes that felt like an entire life. Hard turns, tires screaming, bullets pinging off metal. I pressed my forehead into the floor and tried not to sob. Then everything went quiet at once. The engine slowed, doors stayed locked. Up. My arm got hauled. I sat upright, shaking so hard my teeth clicked. Outside the cracked window, a mansion that didn't belong in Brooklyn. Gothic stone, iron gates. Christmas lights draped over sharp architecture like somebody had tried to soften a weapon. The man was already out, moving around the SUV with controlled speed. He opened my door and looked at me with no warmth at all. I shoved myself back against the seat. "I'm not going anywhere with you." His hand closed around my elbow. Unbreakable. Not rough. Worse than rough. Certain. He pulled me out into the cold and started walking. I dug my heels into the snow-dusted pavement, my broken strap flopping uselessly. "Let go!" I fought his grip. "Let go, you psycho!" "Wrong car," he said, not slowing. "Those men saw your face." "I don't care." "You should." He dragged me toward the front steps like the ground itself belonged to him. "Now you're coming with me," he continued. "Because if you walk out that gate, they grab you in 2 minutes." I twisted hard enough to make my shoulder scream. "Tell them I'm not with you." "Doesn't matter." "Why would they even—" He cut me off, voice suddenly lower. "They think you're mine." The words hit colder than the wind. "They'll use you," he said, eyes forward, jaw tight. "Or they'll kill you. Either way, you become a message." My stomach flipped. "I'm not your message." His hand tightened once on my arm. "Stop talking." The front door flew open. A short, round woman in a red apron rushed out like she'd been waiting for a Christmas miracle. White hair, flushed cheeks, eyes bright with alarm that vanished the second she saw me. She stopped dead. Then she gasped like she'd been punched by joy. "A girl," she breathed. "You brought a girl." "No," I said instantly. "No, you don't understand." She crossed the steps in 2 seconds and pulled me into a hug so fierce it stole my air. "Finally," she whispered into my hair. "Finally." I tried to shove her away. "Ma'am, please." She pulled back just enough to cut my face between her hands like I was something precious. Her fingers were warm and calloused from work. "Look at you," she said, tears already forming. "Little face, little deer eyes. What did you do to my son, I stared at her, stunned. I did nothing. I got into the wrong car. She ignored me completely and turned her head toward the man standing on the steps like a statue. Nico, she started, then corrected herself like she'd remembered something private. Renzo, you did this on Christmas Eve? His expression didn't change. I latched onto the opening. Tell her I'm not. The woman pinched my cheek hard enough to sting and smiled wider. So modest. I'm not modest. I'm kidnapped. She blinked once, looked at Renzo, and then, God help me, her smile softened into something dreamy. Romantic, she whispered. My jaw dropped. What? She clapped her hands once like she'd made a decision for the universe. Inside, you're freezing. Come. I backed toward the open door behind her, hope flaring. And then a giant stepped into my path. A man built like a wall, face carved out of granite, hands too big to be kind. I tried to slip past him. He shifted 1 inch and blocked me without effort. Let me go, I snapped, pushing his chest. Nothing moved. Renzo's voice came from behind me, bored and lethal. Marco, inside. The giant's hand closed around my upper arm and guided me back in like I was a grocery bag. The woman beamed, delighted. Spirit, I like her. I stumbled into a foyer that looked like a cathedral, and a museum had a baby. Marble floors, oil paintings, a staircase that curved like a threat. I'm Teresa, the woman announced proudly, still holding my face like she could keep me here by force of affection. His mother. She turned, calling up the stairs as Renzo started ascending. Renzo, tell her she's welcome. He paused on the 3rd step and looked down at me. Those ice-light eyes swept from my ruined heels to my shaking hands. Stay inside, he said. Tell her I'm not your... He spoke over me, voice calm as frost. She will handle you. Teresa leaned close, whispering like we were conspirators. He's not good with feelings. He's not good with laws either, I muttered, and my own voice surprised me with how sharp it sounded. Renzo's gaze flicked back to me. I lifted my chin. My name is Elise Harper. I'm not... He interrupted, clinical. Fawn. I blinked. What? He stared at me like I was a simple equation. Big eyes, scared, helpless. Anger flared hot enough to keep me standing. I'm a lawyer. He didn't smile. He didn't even look amused. You got into the wrong car, he said, slow and final. Now you're in the wrong world. Try not to die in it, Fawn. I swallowed hard. Then tell your mother I'm not your girlfriend. He held my gaze for 1 quiet second too long. Then, no. Why not? My voice cracked. Something flickered in his eyes. Almost not a feeling, but the shape of one. Because it's easier this way. And then he was gone up the stairs, swallowed by shadow. Teresa looped her arm through mine with terrifying confidence. Come, eat first. I don't want... You'll eat, she said, cheerful as a song. Then we talk about the wedding. There is no wedding. Not yet, she hummed, steering me through a hallway that smelled like garlic and Christmas and other people's lives. Later, I sat at a kitchen table the size of my entire apartment's living room, staring at a bowl of pasta I hadn't asked for, while Teresa narrated my future like it was a holiday schedule. I tried threats. I tried reason. I tried pleading. None of it stuck. At some point, the fear hit me in a delayed wave, and I started crying into a napkin without warning. I just wanted to go home, I whispered. That's all I wanted. Teresa's energy dimmed. She came around the table, arms opening slower this time, gentler. You're home tonight, she said, voice rough with something real. You're safe? You're warm? You ate my pasta? That doesn't make me family. She pulled back and looked me dead in the eye. It does where I come from. I didn't know what to do with that. In the guest room, they put me in, bigger than anywhere I'd ever slept. There was a soft knock. Teresa slipped inside like she belonged. I know I'm too much, she said quietly, but you should understand. My husband died 14 years ago. Her hands twisted together, restless. My son froze after that. He built walls. He stopped noticing people. I stared at her, exhausted. Teresa looked at me like she'd just found a match in the snow. Tonight, he gave you a name, because he thinks I'm helpless. No, she said fierce, because you made him pay attention. The door closed behind her, leaving me alone with a mansion, a locked gate, and a nickname I hated. By morning, hunger and stubbornness pushed me out into the hallways. A voice floated from a doorway like it belonged in a different story entirely. Well, you must be the kidnapped girl. A young man leaned in the frame, messy hair, warm eyes, grin too easy for a house like this. He lifted both hands. Relax. I'm Leo, the funny one. Where is your... I swallowed. Where is Renzo? Leo's grin sharpened. Uncle Renzo? In a meeting. He hates when I call him uncle. Uncle? Raised me, Leo said with a shrug. Long story? You want advice? I didn't answer, so he gave it anyway. Front gate has 6 men, back has 4, cameras trip alarms. The garden wall looks climbable, but it's icy. He tipped his chin. If you're going to run, eat first. Teresa's pastries are worth surviving. I'm not eating pastries, I snapped. Leo's smile didn't fade. Sure. And you definitely won't try the wall the second you find shoes that won't kill you. He walked off whistling something cheerful, leaving his words behind like breadcrumbs. At 2:15 p.m., I had my hands on the top of the garden wall. Stone bit my palms, frost slicked the edge. I swung a leg over and tried to breathe through the cold. Freedom was right there. My foot slipped. The world tilted. My grip failed. I hit the ground hard, pain exploding up my leg like a live wire. A shadow fell across me. A voice drifted down, calm as judgment. Finished? I looked up through tears. Renzo stood at the top of the wall with his hands in his pockets, face unreadable. How? I choked. You were... Meeting ended, he said, and jumped down with a smoothness that made my stomach turn. He crouched, eyes on my ankle like it was a business problem. Can you stand? I'm fine, I lied, trying to push up. My ankle buckled. I bit back a scream. His hand caught my arm instantly, steadying me like I weighed nothing. Before I could slap him away, he lifted me, one arm under my knees, the other behind my back, and started walking. Put me down! I shoved his chest. It was like pushing a wall. You can't walk. That's not your problem. In the snow with a ruined ankle? His voice stayed bored. It becomes my problem. I glared up at him, shaking with fury. My name is Elise. His eyes flicked to mine for one brutal second. I know. That shouldn't have made my throat tighten. It did. He carried me into the house without breaking stride and handed me to Teresa like returning property to its owner. By 7, a dress appeared on my bed. Deep red, silk, the kind of thing you only see on mannequins that don't blink. Next to it, heels the exact size of my feet. I stood over the clothes, heart pounding, and I hated that my first thought wasn't gratitude. It was, he remembered. I walked down the grand staircase in the red dress like I was walking toward a trap I'd volunteered for. The dining room went quiet. Teresa gasped like she'd seen a saint. Leo whistled. Marco glowered. Renzo didn't look up from his plate. Teresa spun toward him. You chose so well. I froze. You chose this? Renzo sliced his food with precise movements. Your dinner is getting cold, Fawn. That's not an answer. Teresa leaned in, delighted. An hour with the catalogs. My son. An hour. Renzo's voice cut through the room, soft and sharp. Mother. Teresa lifted her hands in surrender, still smiling like she'd won. After dinner, I escaped toward the stairs. His voice stopped me with one low word. Fawn. I turned, gripped tight on the banister. What? He stood at the bottom of the stairs, half in shadow. You didn't thank me, he said. I didn't ask you, and yet you're wearing it. Silence stretched, thick and charged. Thank you, I forced out. His gaze swept me slowly. Heels, dress, throat, face, like he was memorizing me without permission. Then, quiet and rough, red suits you. He turned away and vanished down the hall, leaving me on the staircase with a heartbeat that had no right to sound like that. And in the morning, when the mansion should have felt safer, the front door opened. A woman walked in wearing control-like perfume, black hair, green eyes, a red dress that didn't ask for attention. It demanded it. She looked at Renzo like she owned history with him. Domenico, she purred. We need to talk. Now. The woman's eyes found me, and the air changed. Not because she raised her voice, not because she made a threat, because she didn't need to. She moved through the foyer like the house belonged to her, heels clicking on marble, gaze cutting across Teresa, across Leo, across Marco, cataloging everyone and deciding who mattered in a single pass. Then she stopped in front of me. Her smile was perfect and empty. So this is her. Teresa bristled instantly, stepping between us like a shield. She is a guest. The woman's attention didn't shift. She looks like she should be filing documents in a basement office, she said lightly, like she was commenting on weather. Not playing house. The words hit harder than they should have. Old instincts flared. Shrink, apologize, disappear. Renzo's voice landed like a warning shot. Vera. So her name was Vera. She glanced at him, and something cracked beneath her polish. Fatigue, maybe, or anger held too long. 2 months, she said, losing the sweetness. My father has waited 2 months for you to set a date. The room went still. Even Leo stopped smiling. Renzo's posture changed in a way I felt more than saw. His shoulders tightening, the cold settling over him like armor. Your father can wait, he said. Vera's laugh was short and sharp. He won't, She looked past me as if I wasn't worth the trouble of eye contact. The attack on Christmas Eve wasn't the main event. It was a reminder. My stomach sank. Vera's gaze returned to Renzo. 7 days, she said. Either there's a wedding or there's a war. Teresa's hands clenched. Marco's jaw flexed. Leo stepped forward, voice losing its cheer. That's enough, Vera. She didn't even glance at him. Stay out of this, kid. Kid. Leo's smile vanished completely. Vera's attention slid back to me, and for a second I thought I saw something close to pity. Is she worth it? She asked Renzo softly. Is she worth your mother? I didn't breathe. Renzo's voice dropped lower. Leave. Vera held his stare, then nodded once like she'd done her duty. 1 week, she repeated. That's all I could buy you. She turned to go, then paused at the doorframe, shoulders stiff. For what it's worth, she said without looking back. I don't want this either. Then she was gone, taking warmth with her. The house didn't exhale. It stayed tight. I found myself in the hallway 10 minutes later because my legs carried me there, because standing still felt like drowning. Vera appeared again like she'd been waiting. I wasn't finished, she said, catching my arm. Not bruising, just firm. I yanked back. Don't touch me. She released me immediately, eyes sharp. Good, keep that backbone. Soft girls don't last around my father. My name is Elise, I snapped, and I don't belong in any of this. Vera tilted her head. No, she agreed. You don't. Her gaze flicked over me, clinical. That's why you're dangerous. Before I could ask what she meant, she walked away, and the echo of her heels sounded like a countdown. That night, I found Renzo in the library. Firelight filled the room, golden and deceptive. He stood by a shelf like he'd been built into the house. Why don't you just marry her? The question escaped before I could stop it. His head turned slowly. All your problems disappear, I said, trying to sound practical. No war, no threats. And then, I'm not a target. Renzo crossed the room without hurrying and stopped close enough that I had to tilt my head back. He lifted my chin with one finger. Not gentle, not cruel. Certain. You want me to marry her, he said quietly. It's logical. A smile touched his mouth for half a second and vanished. I don't build my life on logic. That's obvious. I shot back. His eyes held mine. I don't like Vera. She's beautiful, I said, hating myself for how tight the words felt. She's not the woman I want, he replied. My pulse kicked. You don't even know me. He leaned closer, voice lower. I know you climbed my wall. I fell, I hissed. I know you fought Marco, he continued. I lost, I snapped. And I know you look at this house like it's a trap, he finished, gaze cutting into me. But you haven't stopped looking. Heat rose in my throat. That doesn't mean anything. His thumb brushed my cheekbone once. Brief, like he was testing fire. Then he stepped back. Sleep, he said, voice turning to steel again. Tomorrow is busy. By morning, I was done being handled. Not brave, done. I found a small knife in the kitchen, slid it into my back pocket, and told myself I was taking control of at least one thing. Leo was in the garden, perched on a stone bench like a bored prince. He saw my face and lifted an eyebrow. You look like you're about to commit a felony. Walk me to the gate, I said. His grin faltered. Elise, I'm leaving. He studied me for a long moment, then sighed, standing slowly. Okay, but don't do anything stupid. I pulled the knife out and held it between us with both hands, shaking so hard the blade flashed in the winter light. Leo's hands went up. Whoa, okay, we're doing dramatic now. I'm not here to hurt you, I said, voice steady even while my hands betrayed me. I'm here to get out. He nodded once, carefully. Put it down. No. Leo watched my eye, not the knife. You don't know what's waiting outside. I don't care. Yes, you do, he said quietly. You're just angry enough to pretend you don't. I swallowed. Open the gate. Leo stared at me like he wanted to argue. Then he did something worse. He gave in. Fine, he said. Your choice. He walked ahead of me toward the front gate, shoulders tight, and I followed with the knife hidden again, my heart banging against my ribs like it wanted out too. The iron gate looked different in daylight. Less decorative, more like a warning. Leo typed a code into the panel. The gate hummed and swung open. Gray street beyond, cold air, freedom in the shape of a sidewalk. He turned to me. Last chance. Open it, I whispered, and my throat felt like sand. It is open, he said. I stepped through. I didn't look back. I didn't see Leo's hand reach into his coat pocket. I didn't hear the 3 urgent words he spoke into his phone. She's out. Hurry. The street was quiet. Expensive quiet. Brownstones. Parked cars that looked polished even in winter. I walked fast, scanning for a taxi, a bus, anything. A cab rolled by with its light off. Another ignored me. Another looked through me like I was a ghost. Then a black van slid up to the curb with predatory silence. The side door opened. 2 men stepped out like they'd practiced this. One of them looked me over once. Santoro's girl? The other nodded. That's her. My blood went cold. I turned to run. A hand grabbed my arm and yanked me back so hard my teeth clacked. Please, I choked out. I'm nobody. Boss wants you alive, the man said, bored. Didn't say anything about comfortable. They dragged me toward the van. Panic tore loose in me, wild and useless. I fought. My boots slipped on ice. My nails caught fabric and did nothing. Then a single gunshot cracked the air. One of the men screamed, releasing me, clutching his shoulder as blood darkened his sleeve. I hit the ground hard, palms stinging, and there he was. Renzo stood in the street with his gun raised, face empty of emotion and full of violence. Put her down, he said. The uninjured man yanked his own gun out and pointed it at my head with shaking hands. Back off, Santoro. Orders are orders. Renzo took one step forward like the weapon didn't exist. You have 3 seconds, he said calmly. Drop it. The man swallowed. Valenti wants her. 1. Sweat beaded on his forehead. You're outnumbered, he tried. You. 2. His hand trembled. Renzo's voice dropped lower. Tell your boss if he wants her, he comes himself. He doesn't send rats. 3. The gun clattered to the pavement. The men scrambled into the van, dragging the wounded one with them, tires squealing as they fled. Renzo was beside me instantly, crouching, hands moving with efficient speed as he checked my wrists, my shoulders, my face. Did they touch you? He demanded. And for the first time, his voice wasn't bored. It was tight. I couldn't get the words out. My throat locked. Tears spilled hot and humiliating. He lifted me off the ground like I weighed nothing and carried me toward the waiting SUV. I told you, he said, voice quiet and furious. I told you what would happen. I just wanted to go home. I managed, broken. I just wanted. You almost died. He cut in, and something cracked for half a second under the ice. Do you understand that? He got me into the SUV, slammed the door, and then sat behind the wheel like he was holding himself together by force. Back at the house, Teresa was already crying in the foyer before we even made it inside. Leo appeared at the edge of the hallway, face pale, bravado gone. Renzo's voice hit him like a blade. You walked her to the gate. She had a knife, Leo said, voice stripped. You thought wrong. Renzo's anger didn't explode. It tightened. I said protect her, he continued, quiet now, worse than shouting. Not perform mercy and call it freedom. Leo swallowed hard. I'm sorry. Renzo turned away like apology was irrelevant. That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wrists bruised, heartbeat still racing. The door opened softly. Renzo stepped in, closed it behind him, and sat on the edge of the bed like it cost him something to be there. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then his hand slid into my hair, slow, careful, as if he didn't trust himself with anything harsher. Don't be scared, he murmured. I stayed still, pretending to sleep because I didn't know what to do with tenderness from a man who carried a gun like it was part of his body. His voice dropped lower, rougher. You're under my protection now. The words should have felt like another cage. Instead, in the aftermath of the van and the gun and the cold street, they landed like a blanket. And that scared me more than anything else. The next morning, breakfast smelled like coffee and bacon and denial. Teresa fussed. Leo tried to joke and failed. Marco watched the doors like he expected war to walk in. Renzo came in quiet, black t-shirt, damp hair, that same unreadable face. Leo leaned toward me and whispered, "He's in a mood." I noticed. I whispered back. Renzo's gaze flicked to me across the table. Not soft, not warm, but present. After breakfast, I wandered into the library and found him there, alone, staring at a stack of papers like they offended him. He tossed one at me without warning. A contract, he said. My attorneys sent it. It's poison. I caught it, instinctively scanning. My brain snapped into work like it had been starving for something real. This clause contradicts the liability section, I said immediately. And the force majeure wording is wrong for New York. Whoever drafted this left you exposed on 3 different fronts. Renzo's eyes narrowed. How do you know that? Because I'm not stupid, I said, and the bitterness surprised me. I just work somewhere that treats me like I am. Silence. Then Renzo extended his hand. Show me. For an hour, I marked lines, circled traps, rewrote language. He listened, not politely, not like a favor, like it mattered. When I finally slid the paper back to him, my fingers tingled. You're wasted where you are, he said. I laughed once, dry. Tell me something I don't know. His gaze held mine. Anyone who can't see what you're worth doesn't deserve you. My throat tightened. I left the library before I could do something stupid like believe him. That afternoon, a box appeared on my bed. Then another. Clothes. soft sweaters, tailored pieces that actually fit my body instead of hiding it. No note, no explanation. At dinner, Teresa practically vibrated with joy. Leo kept shooting me looks like he wanted to narrate the tension out loud. Renzo ate like nothing had changed. Afterward, I escaped toward the stairs again, breath tight. His voice stopped me. Fawn. I turned, hand gripping the banister. What? He stood half in shadow again, as if this house preferred him that way. You ran, he said. I tried, I corrected. He tilted his head slightly. Next time you decide to gamble your life, you will do it with me present. That's not a promise, that's a threat. His mouth curved barely. Depends what you do with it. I stared at him, pulse kicking. And Elise, he said quietly. My real name, spoken like he'd been holding it back. You're not invisible here. The words landed hard. I didn't answer because if I did, my voice would have betrayed me. And upstairs, alone, I realized I wasn't just scared of his enemies anymore. I was scared of how quickly this house was starting to feel like a place my loneliness could get used to. By the 6th day, the mansion had changed the way I moved. Not because it won me over, because it forced adaptation. I learned the floorboard that creaked near the east wing, the camera angle that caught the garden path, the time Marco rotated guards, the sound of Renzo's footsteps, quiet, deliberate, never rushed. And I learned something worse. Renzo was watching me learn. He didn't hover. He didn't trap me in a room. He didn't even touch me unless he had to. But his attention was a weight I could feel across spaces. On the 7th day, Vera's deadline sat in the air like a knife. Teresa tried to cook it away. Leo tried to joke it away. Marco tried to prepare for it like a soldier. Renzo turned into something colder. He made calls in Italian that turned my stomach just from tone alone. He took meetings I wasn't allowed to witness. He slept less. And somehow, in the middle of that, he handed me a folder. Everything we have on Salvatore Valenti, he said. Salvatore? I asked. Renzo's jaw tightened. Her father. Vera's father had a different name than the one she wore in polite rooms. Of course he did. Find something, Renzo said. Anything. His eyes held mine. Not asking. Assigning. My fingers closed around the folder, and for the first time since the SUV, I felt something other than fear. Purpose. I spent hours at his desk, the mansion's silence pressing in while paper screamed facts, shell companies, property deeds, consulting invoices that were laundering wrapped in polite fonts, notaries, witness signatures, corporate filings. I cross-referenced, highlighted, built timelines, circled patterns. My eyes burned, my neck ached. And then, at the bottom of a registration document, my brain snagged on a name. Arthur Bennington, Notary Public. It appeared again, and again, and again. The ink on the signatures changed slightly over the years, but the name stayed constant like a stamp. I opened a separate file. Death records Teresa kept in a safe because she kept everything. Arthur Bennington, deceased. Date, November 2019. I stared at the screen. My skin prickled. Then I flipped back to the filings. His name was on documents dated 2021, 2022, 2023. A dead man authorizing living crimes. I stood so fast my chair scraped the floor. Renzo, I called, voice sharp enough to cut. Now. He appeared in the doorway almost immediately, like he'd been nearby on purpose. What? I shoved the page at him. This notary, he's dead. Renzo's eyes dropped to the line, then lifted back to me slowly. Explain. Dead, I repeated, tapping the date. Yet his authorization appears on every major registration tied to Valenti Holdings for 4 years after he died. Leo drifted in behind him, sensing blood in the water. That's not great for them. Marco stepped closer, silent but intent. Renzo's expression didn't change, except for one thing. Focus sharpened into something dangerous. What does it mean? He asked, voice low. It means the foundation is rotten, I said, and my hands were shaking. Not from fear, from adrenaline. If those filings are invalid, their assets are vulnerable. Bank accounts, properties, shell companies. If the paperwork is fraudulent, a prosecutor can freeze everything while they investigate. Leo let out a low whistle. Elise just tried to stab her way out last week, and now she's dismantling an empire with a notary. Shut up, I muttered automatically, but I was smiling before I meant to. Renzo's gaze stayed on me like I'd become a new kind of threat. You did this in one night, he said. No, I corrected. I did this in a few hours. Your lawyers missed it for years because they weren't looking for the right kind of flaw. Something in his eyes shifted. Respect, sharp and clean. It should have made me proud. Instead, it made my stomach twist because pride wasn't the only thing I felt when he looked at me like that. We move tonight, Renzo said. Leo's grin returned, smaller now. Straight to the DA? Renzo didn't answer him. He didn't take his eyes off me. Are you sure? I thought of the van door sliding open, the hand on my wrist, the gun at my head. I thought of Vera's warning. I thought of Renzo's quiet voice in the dark. You're under my protection now. I'm sure, I said. That night, the city felt like it was holding its breath. Renzo drove. I sat in the passenger seat with the folder in my lap, the evidence heavy as a weapon. Streetlights flickered across his face as we stopped outside a government building that looked unimpressive for the power it held. Renzo's hands tightened on the steering wheel. I trust you, he said, voice stripped of its usual control. I looked at him. He kept his gaze forward. You could turn me in too. Kidnapping. Threats. Everything. He finally turned his head toward me, and for once his eyes weren't ice. They were open. I'm in your hands, he said quietly. That's how serious I am. My throat tightened. I didn't soften. I didn't forgive him with a smile. I didn't pretend this was romantic. You did kidnap me, I said. His jaw flexed. I could ruin you, I continued. And you know it. He nodded once. Yes. Silence. Snow drifted past the windshield. I opened the car door. Inside the DA's office, the questions came fast. How did you get this? Who are you? Why bring it here? Are you willing to testify? Can you confirm the source? I answered what I could. I told them about Valenti. I did not tell them about Renzo. When I walked back out into the cold, the SUV was still there. He could have run. He didn't. I slid into the seat and closed the door. For a long moment, we didn't speak. Then Renzo exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for an hour. You came back. Yes, I said. Why? I looked out the window at the snow and the street and the life that had waited for me a week ago. Because I'm tired of being a ghost, I said quietly. And for the first time, somebody listened when I spoke. Renzo's throat moved. Elise? I turned to him. Take me home. Home. The word tasted wrong and right at the same time. New Year's Eve arrived like the mansion wanted to prove it could be something other than a fortress. Teresa filled every surface with candles and lights. Food appeared in absurd quantities. Marco stood at the edges like he expected bullets to crash through the windows anyway. Leo handed me a glass of champagne and grinned. You realize you've been here a week and already became the most dangerous person in the family. I'm literally just good at paperwork, I said. Leo waggled his brows. Paperwork ruins more men than guns. Teresa cried at the table just because she could. Then she handed me a package with shaking hands. Inside, a worn cookbook filled with Italian handwriting and flour-smudged notes. My mother, Teresa whispered. Now yours. My chest tightened so fast it hurt. Leo shoved a second package into my lap, badly wrapped. Inside was a black t-shirt with a cartoon deer and the words, I survived the Santoro house. I laughed so hard I almost cried. Marco stepped forward last, holding a leather notebook with my initials pressed into the corner. He didn't speak. He just nodded once. Respect. Then Teresa clapped her hands. One more gift. The room went quiet. Renzo stood. He walked toward me slowly, and for the first time, he looked almost uncertain. He stopped in front of me and sank down on one knee. My breath disappeared. He opened a small box. A ring caught firelight. Teresa made a sound like she'd been waiting 14 years for this exact second. Renzo looked up at me, eyes too bright to be called cold. I'm not good at speeches, he said, voice rough. I don't do soft words. My hands trembled. But you changed my house, he continued, and his jaw tightened like it hurt to admit. You changed my mother. You changed my nephew. Leo made an offended noise. I was already perfect. Marco stared him down. Renzo didn't look away from me. And you changed me, he said, quieter now. I don't know what to call what that is yet. My throat closed. He lifted the ring slightly, hand steady even though everything else about him looked exposed. Elise Harper, he said, using my full name like a vow. Will you marry me? My brain tried to find the list of reasons this was insane. Kidnapping, guns, threats, a week, a war on the horizon. But then I remembered the DA's face when the folder opened. I remembered Renzo staying parked outside, waiting to see if I'd destroy him. I remembered Teresa's hands on my face saying, You ate my pasta. Your family. I looked down at Renzo. I'm not saying yes because I'm trapped, I said, voice shaking. His eyes didn't flinch. Good. I'm saying yes, I continued, because I choose where I belong. Tears blurred Teresa into a glowing mess. Leo whooped. Marco's mouth twitched like he might be trying not to smile. Renzo slid the ring onto my finger with a carefulness that made my chest ache. He stood and pulled me into him, not crushing, not claiming, holding. He kissed my forehead like it was a promise. Outside, fireworks cracked the sky. Inside, for one night, the mansion felt like it had stopped being a place people were taken to and started being a place someone could return to. The next morning, the TV murmured in the background until a name snapped everything sharp. Salvatore Valenti arrested. It worked. I turned toward Renzo, triumph rising hot in my chest. His hand cupped my cheek, thumb brushing once like grounding me. You did that? He said. Leo stumbled in, hair a disaster. After 14 years, he breathed, dropping into a chair. It's over. Teresa crossed herself and cried like relief was a language. Later, a knock sounded at the front door. Leo peeked through the window and grinned. Other families are here. Renzo's expression went hard instantly. He pulled me closer. Tell them my wife isn't their lawyer. I lifted a brow. Your wife? He exhaled, frustrated and soft at once. Yes. I squeezed his hand. No Mafia clients, I said. But I'll keep you from signing garbage contracts ever again. Renzo's mouth curved. Deal. He leaned down and kissed me once. Slow, steady, warm. Not a threat, not a command, a choice. And if you think that's where the danger ends, you haven't been paying attention. So if you want what happens after the arrest, after the other families, after Vera, after the city realizes Valenti fell, subscribe. Because the war doesn't always end when someone gets taken away in handcuffs. Sometimes that's when the real debt comes due.